All right, good morning, everybody who's joining us here. This is the VetFran Cibolo, Texas panel. I'm happy to be joining you here alongside a couple of folks who have been so gracious as to help me out today. We've got Dustin Morris, who's going to chat here briefly from the city of Cibolo, as well as Tom Tobin, who is a new franchisee in the Cibolo area. So Dustin, if you have a few words you want to say, go right ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. First, I just want to say again, my name is Dustin Morris. I work for the City of Cibolo's Economic Development Department. On behalf of the City of Cibolo, I just wanted to thank Matt and everyone with VetFran for hosting this event, putting this together. This was extremely valuable for the veterans in our community, just because with everything going on in the world, this would be a great opportunity for some people to kind of start a new venture. I also would want to thank, on behalf of the City of Cibolo, everyone that's taking their time, as far as all the panelists and the attendees and viewers in the audience. This will be recorded, and so if anyone needs any kind of information from this recording, just please reach out to myself. I will include my email and any of the emails. It'll be dmorris@cibolotx.gov. And of course, we also have Matt Wiggins, who will have the recording as well. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dustin. And just to touch on that point, throughout the session here, there is the ability for anybody who's listening to ask questions in the chat, and I can turn on your webcam if you like, or you can just ask them there and we can answer them at any point throughout the session. Tom Tobin, I want to get to you, have you introduce yourself, because you're going to offer a unique perspective here as a franchisee who's currently franchising in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. I'm happy to support the City of Cibolo, and then just assist other veterans as they make that transition. The quick story on me is I was almost born and raised in San Antonio. I've been here most of my life, the Army brat myself. Was in the Army for a period of time. After exiting, I went to OT school as an occupational therapist, and then got my MBA here in San Antonio. So I spent 30 years as an occupational therapist. And so the bulk of my background is in healthcare. And I was in private practice the last 20 years, building my business and working with other Fortune 100 companies across the US as I was building my own company. About 2 years ago, retired, sold my company, and began moving forward on plans that we began making, which I think we'll probably be answering some of those questions later, but began moving forward on some of the plans we've been making with Grease Monkey, an auto loop franchise based in Denver, Colorado. And so I'm a realtor. I retired for about 3 months, got my real estate license, working with my wife building her real estate company, and starting the franchise with Grease Monkey to build a company with my son, whose background is in automotive. So that's the quick story, Matt. I'm happy to fill it out if you want some more.
Perfect. And we'll get to a few more things as we get through the session here. But I kind of want to just get started by giving a little lay of the land for the session. So I'm going to start with just kind of a presentation here that's going to run through some of the basics of franchising. And throughout, we'll turn to Tom for some insights on his actual franchise journey. And then at the end, we'll have time for some Q&A, or I've got some questions from Tom, or for Tom, and we can kind of run through some of those. So let's get started with the presentation here and kind of go from there. So I want to start here with just a little bit of background on the IFA, so that you can hear from me about who we are and what we do. So the IFA is the world's oldest and largest organization that represents franchise businesses. We're based in Washington, D.C., and we do advocacy as well as membership in order to kind of help our members further the industry, as well as kind of foster a sense of community and learn more about best practices and business. Our mission is to protect, enhance, and promote franchising. And again, we have members from about 100 different countries. We truly are an international association. So I want to run through a few things here. We'll kind of go through what is franchising, as well as how franchising impacts the economy, some of the advantages and disadvantages to the system, as well as an evaluation process. And then we'll kind of go through a few different things as to how franchisors look for candidates and things like that. So I kind of want to start with a little bit of background as to, what is franchising exactly? Franchising is a business strategy or method of distributing products and services. Basically, what happens here in a franchise agreement um, is the franchisor has kind of a relationship with a franchisee where they lend their trademark and business practices to the franchisee in order to execute upon their business. So the franchisee will pay a fee, which we call the initial franchise fee, as well as an ongoing royalty, which is a percentage, of their revenues for the right to continue to do business under that franchisor's system. So it is a very symbiotic relationship where the franchisee and the franchisor um, are constantly working together in order to make the business relationship stronger, as well as kind of this continual sense of betterment between the two. So that's the franchisor franchisee relationship. And I mean, if you're here, you probably kind of understand, what a franchise is to that extent. So we'll get a little deeper here, and we'll talk about kind of what does the franchise landscape look like in the U.S. So there's about 780,000 franchise businesses in this country and around the world across over 300 business lines. So it really is an all-encompassing system where it's all sorts of things all at one time. It's a very wide scale kind of industry, and for that reason, there's a lot of different opportunities within franchising. The industry is responsible for 9.1 million direct jobs. That's people who are employed within franchise companies, as well as about 9 million indirect jobs. That's folks who supply the franchise industry or work tangentially with it. So as you can see, there's about 18 million jobs that are either part of franchising or franchise tangential. So franchising is a huge part of the US economy in that sense. We're responsible for nearly $1 trillion of economic output within the US economy. And this is a very interesting stat that franchise businesses grow at rates that exceed non-franchise business growth. So it really is kind of an industry that's very strong, always growing, and it really is a testament to that franchisor-franchisee relationship being really strong because they are more successful than your traditional non-franchise business. So here's a quick kind of employment distribution. This is an interesting kind of chart because a lot of people think, obviously, quick service restaurants, fast food, when they think franchising, but there really is a big industry here of different services, so personal services, business services, real estate and automotive, like the system that Tom is involved with. There's a lot of things that people don't think about at first when it comes to franchising, whether it's hotels, haircutting salons, things like that. Many of them are franchised. So really, if there's a business line that you're looking to get into, there's a good chance there's a franchise that does it. So here's just a few of some of the different categories that are often kind of overlooked in terms of franchises. Children's services like daycares and schools, construction and remodeling companies, educational services, environmental services like janitorial, cleaning, and things like that, as well as lawn and garden, pest control, things like that. There are a lot of those different industries that may seem like they're just a traditional non-franchise small business, but there are a lot of franchise companies that are involved in these types of businesses. So I want to get started here, and we'll start to kind of pull on Tom for some of these because I give kind of a holistic advantages and disadvantages to franchising, and I kind of want to preface this by saying, I do this because I want people to be able to see not necessarily that there are bad things about franchising, but there are things that you need to be aware of before getting involved, so that you kind of know the full scope of the business model. So to kind of start with some of these, we say you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And that's because, regardless of how you're running the business, you're going to have a lot of independence in, running your own business, choosing your own employees, training them. But there are also pieces of the franchise agreement where you are kind of dependent upon the franchisor to show you, training manuals and things like that, and exactly how the business will be run. So that's a great advantage because you're constantly supported by the franchisor company behind you. In many cases, there's no previous franchise experience required in that industry. Lots of people join franchises that they, don't have any background in, just because it's something that they're interested in, and so you don't necessarily need to have a lot of experience. Like in Tom's case, if you were going to open a Grease Monkey or Speedy, you would not necessarily need to have automotive experience in your background. You could easily just get involved with that because the franchisor is going to teach you that business, right? It's going to be something, as long as you're able to learn and you're willing to learn, any franchise business can really be for you. You get to affiliate with a brand name. It's a proven system. Folks often know the brand name. So rather than just opening, Joe's Oil Changes, you can affiliate yourself with something that people recognize the brand. So they see it as a mark of quality. And becoming part of a proven system. The franchise exists, and it's been selling new units and growing, and that means that it's finding success. There is something there that works, so you can know that the system is going to be it's a successful system that's growing, and it's something that you can feel safe getting involved in. Receiving ongoing training and support. The franchise model is based upon being able to learn more about the business constantly, because the business is innovating. The folks at the franchisor level are constantly developing new things. They're doing research and development. They will give you kind of this ongoing system of support, holding you up and helping you grow the business, because they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting while you get to focus on running your store. So that's a great kind of background to have behind you that's constantly training you with new products and new services, as well as the support for you and your employees. And then there's also kind of this access to product and equipment. There's a great ability to affiliate yourself with a large system. They have access to things that may be difficult to get if you were on your own in a non-franchise business. During COVID, when supplies and things became constrained and it was hard to get things at the beginning there, being affiliated with a franchisor system, when businesses started reopening, franchisees were able to kind of find themselves with more bargaining power, because they were part of larger systems that were able to become part of something larger. So they were able to kind of see more for themselves and have access to things that they may not have been able to if they were part of a non-franchise business. So I want to pause here. Tom, is there anything that I've said here that kind of you agree with or you don't agree with in terms of why you chose to go with a franchise rather than starting your own small business that was not affiliated with a franchise?
Yeah, I would say that I would agree with what you said in kind of holistically, but it's going to be up to the individual franchisee to identify companies that actually do this. In an ideal world, each of these things would be a component in a really good relationship. And they're definitely all things that I looked at when I was deciding on which real estate company I was going to align myself with, and which auto services company I was going to align myself with. But it's going to be up to the individual franchisee to determine whether or not these things are going to be provided for them, and if so, at what level. And so, being business for yourself, but I'll just go through them real quickly, but not by yourself. How integrated, ask yourself how integrated they are going to be into your organization. How is your success tied to their success? I looked at a lot of different organizations on both sides, real estate and auto services. And the reason that I chose the ones that I did was because I felt like our long-term, not just goals, but my long-term success was tied to theirs, and vice versa. So if I'm not making money, they're not making money. Others might have very large franchise fees up front, and so you're committing hundreds of thousands of dollars up front before you've even seen the level of support that you can get. Not having any previous experience that lends itself to how integrated are you? How much training do they have? What does it look like? Is it, here's a manual, or is it, online virtual training? Is it structured well? I've seen both of those, and I've seen a wide spectrum. So talking to other franchisees within for that organization will give you a lot of really good information. If the corporate body is hesitant to give you contact information for other franchisees, you need to be worried. Um, Brand name, I'm liking the fact that I'm working with two organizations who are in the process of establishing their brand name. So it's something new, it's something exciting. On the real estate side, it's an organization that was virtually based before COVID ever hit. So it doesn't have the costly infrastructure of just about every other real estate company. On the Grease Monkey side, it's a brand that wanted to come into Texas and had begun in a couple of places, and I'd seen success in those areas. The oil service or the auto service business is highly competitive, as is real estate. And then the ongoing training support, that proven system. But I think that the other part, the access to product and equipment that you made, that's a really important point. It's one thing to, if you're a ranger and you get dropped into a middle of nowhere and you've got great equipment but no mission, you've got no one on your team to support you. It's like, now where am I going to go? Or vice versa, you're highly skilled, but then you don't have the equipment. So it's finding that mixture. So, but you have to do your research. You have to be willing to do your research and talk to other people before you select the brand that you're going to go with.
And that's a good point. There is a lot of background that goes into selecting a system, and in a lot of ways, like you said, there's a lot of research that has to be done, and I'll definitely touch on some of that later because it's a very important piece of making that selection. So I want to cover here just a couple of kind of disadvantages that you may think are disadvantages or you may not, but they are things that you should be aware of in terms of how the whole franchise arrangement works. So first of all, you're not going to be completely independent, right? There are things that will be set by the franchisor that are part of the franchise itself, and there are reasons for that. There are restrictions on what you can sell and how you may do that and the ways that you can operate because it is part of this proven system. And the essence of a franchise is there are things that you will execute upon without changing them because that's part of the proven business model, right? So you're going to have probably restrictions where if you decide you wanted to just change the uniforms that your employees wear, you probably can't do that without a consultation with the franchisor at the very least. You can't just decide that you don't like the logo and you want to change it one day. There are certain things that have to be kind of followed as part of the franchise system, but that's for the good of the franchise system as a whole. If one franchisee is not following the requirements of the system, it opens the whole system up to issues. If one location is providing bad service, it can give folks a negative impression of the brand across the board. So that's why there are kind of these requirements on the system. So if what you're looking for is complete independence, then a franchise business may not be where you want to start your search. But for a lot of people, giving up a little bit of that ability is actually going to provide some stability. It's going to help them to not have to make these kinds of small decisions. They can come in and execute the business in the way that it has been known to function well. Whether you view that as an advantage or a disadvantage, it is something to be aware of. Continuing royalty and advertising fees. If you're looking at a franchise, obviously it's going to be something that you're probably aware of. That there are fees and royalties and advertising fees that are paid as a part of the business. Typically, the royalty fee somewhere around 5%, could be more or less depending on the system. It's something that you'll find out as you begin to investigate and learn more about a system. And then advertising fees, usually 2.5 to somewhere around there percent. And the advertising fee and the royalty itself are important because you have to understand kind of why those fees exist, right? We're talking about all of the things that are included, the training, the support, the development, the research, everything that goes on at the franchisor level. The royalty fee really is the support for that system behind you, right? You're paying it back so that the franchisor continues to operate and provide you with those kinds of things. The advertising fee is kind of the same way. When we talk about advertising fees in a system, those go toward creating digital marketing. And you know, if you see a company like purchasing television ads on a, you know, like I was saying, there's a lot of franchises that were, if you watch the World Series, there were a lot of franchises that had these ads that are very expensive that are running during this event and getting great attention for their franchisees. That only happens when franchisees are paying back a royalty fee, and that collective money together can go to buy things that are beneficial for the whole system and can really generate a lot for your business. You'd be spending money on advertising anyway, right? If you were running a non-franchise small business. But the advertising fee to a franchisor actually goes back and is combined with the resources of other franchisees to really make a more meaningful advertising kind of push. So that fee and the royalty together, again, you may see them as a disadvantage, but they are things that would probably be coming out of your money, your revenue stream anyway. So that's important to note. Franchisees performing poorly or the franchisor running into an unforeseen problem. I put that in there because, like I mentioned before, if a franchisee is not following kind of what has to happen in terms of their execution of the system, there can be issues that are damaging to the system because you have to kind of be performing on your best in order to make the whole system look successful. So you want to keep an eye on that. Does the system have, when you're doing your research, franchisees that are dedicated toward making the system great and providing great service? Is it a system that strives for excellence? Because then those kinds of concerns can really not be a major issue. The franchise agreement term as well, that's kind of part of looking at the franchise disclosure document, and we'll get into that a little bit, but basically that is just to say be aware of what you're agreeing to when signing on the dotted line at the end of the franchise search process, when you're looking to actually finalize and open. Be aware of what the franchise company is offering you, just so that you know, and whether it means that you should hire a franchise lawyer or things like that. Kind of just be aware of things like that. And so I want to go back to Tom here. Any of these kind of disadvantages that you kind of thought of yourself, that you went through when you were looking at your system?
Yeah, I'm going to start from where you finished, and then I'll go backwards. Having someone that you can rely on from a legal perspective is going to be critical. Oftentimes, I think people do their own research. At least some of the people that I've spoken with, they've done their own research, but they don't really have a team. An accountant, an attorney that can help them make really good, educated decisions. So a lot of it ends up being emotional, or what can I afford, et cetera. What I would say is that what you can't afford is not having at least an attorney review the franchisee. Because one of the things that was very important to me that I found great flexibility on was geography. So if you're a franchisee and you go and you build a brand, and 5 years later you're extending that brand into your local market, if you don't have a geographical protection, somebody else comes in and puts another one within a certain distance, and the next thing you know, they're eating away at 10 to 15% of what you've created in terms of loyalty for your client base in that community. And so that was one of the things that I think is very important. I thought about it a little bit, but it really wasn't on my radar until my attorney said, "Hey, look, I've had several cases where a franchisor infringed, or there was an infringement argument with a franchisee in terms of what they had built in that area." So definitely have people involved. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to change their contract, because they're very opposed typically to changing their own contract. But there are things, like in my case, what I decided to do was get an area developer's license that gave me geographical protection and required that I build at least 3 in the next 5 years. Well, that was fine because I'd already planned on doing that anyways. So I had to come out of pocket a little bit up front for the area developer's license, but they complemented that with what they do as part of the VetFran program, and providing me a discount on my franchise fee. So there was a give and take there. So that's, I think, very important. The other thing is that you are going to have to budget for advertising, and you could call it advertising, marketing, community relations, whatever you want to call it. And what you'll find is that that percentage that you provide is nothing compared to what you pay for if it was if you're just doing it yourself. But when you do it collectively, and market an entire area, I mean, they're highly incentivized to help you build your revenue, because without it, they're not getting paid. You don't get paid royalties off of zero. So, you know, having that understanding and budgeting that in advance is very important. And then also making sure that you're working with an organization that helps you. Like I'm not super skilled in social media, but they have a whole social media department that helps me. And then not only that, also has a system by which if somebody gives me a negative review, I'm notified of that promptly, and I can address it head on, as opposed to, looking at a report a month later where some people have been disgruntled and nobody took care of it. So um, the last thing is the continuing royalty and advertising fees. That's an emotional thing. At the beginning, you're going to need their help, and you're more than willing to pay that. I guarantee you, 3, 5 years from now, you're going to be going, well, I could be doing this myself now. And you have to look back at the beginning and saying, if I had not had their assistance, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so that's more of an emotional decision as opposed to just, it's a line item on your P&L, and it's a cost of doing business. And so the last piece of that is you have to start. I started my practice when I was in my early 30s. So I had a long runway to succeed or fail and do something differently. If you're ending a career in the military and you've been there for 20, 25 years or whatever, you may not have another 20 years to succeed or fail. You need to succeed. And I'm not saying that you want to fail. I'm just saying, you need to succeed, but that time value of money is very important. And that's the thing is you may still be able to get off the runway, but the sooner you get off and you're profitable, the greater your long-term abilities are financially, and the more successful you could be as an organization. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's a good point, right? I mean, you at the beginning, that help is invaluable to have someone standing behind you, kind of showing you, you know, this is how other franchisees have found success. This is what's worked for us. If you didn't have any of that when you're starting a non-franchise business, it really is just up to you. And so it does make sense that emotional connection you described really does resonate. So I want to move on a little bit here to kind of evaluating a franchise, because this is something that I think that you'll be able to speak to as well, Tom. This is how we kind of talk about why would you want to go with a certain franchise over another? What industry should I get involved with, and things like that. So first thing is conducting market research. It's understanding not just where you want to go with your franchise, but also in what industry. Are there a ton of competitors? Would it be really hard to break out? Also, what is the local business landscape look like? And so kind of determining those things is a really big component of getting started, because you want to feel strong and confident by the time you've already gotten started with your process. You want to feel like this community that you're getting involved with will respond positively to the business, and that you think you've got a great shot of getting started. So that's kind of step one: big market research, doing a lot of background into what you're thinking and where you want to be. Evaluating the strength of the franchisor is also pretty critical. It's something where you want to go back and be able to say, you know, what does the franchisor currently look like? Are they growing? What rate? Have they had units closing? Have they had units opening? How old is the system? There's a lot of kind of indicators there that you can look at to determine, okay, here's the overall health picture of the franchise company that I'm thinking of affiliating with. And that kind of pulls upon that last bullet point that I'll get to in a second. One thing that I'm sure Tom would recommend as well is calling existing or former franchisees of the system. One of the best ways that you can learn about what's going on at the franchise is to be able to see from someone who's currently doing it what the business looks like, and how it's going for them, both in terms of their actual revenue, customers. Are they, how are things going in that realm? But also asking about the franchisor. How's the support system? How much are they innovating? How fresh is the business? How are things going? Those are the kinds of questions that you can really get a good answer to by talking to existing franchisees. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of conversations that go on with the franchisor. That's a huge relationship that you'll establish. But talking to franchisees first is a great way to find out about the overall kind of enthusiasm and everything that's going on within the system. Tom touched on this as well. You're going to want to have a lawyer or someone who you can trust, who's going to help guide you through this process, because there are a lot of documents, there's a lot to read through, and it is a big commitment, right? It's a huge financial commitment for a lot of people, and so they want to make sure that it's a safe investment and that they're covered. Talking to a lawyer, hiring a lawyer or an accountant if need be, can be very critical in that process. And there are specialists, there are franchise lawyers, there are franchise accountants that you can hire who this is what they do. They know exactly about the industry. Getting involved with one of them can be very helpful in that process. And finally, the franchise disclosure document. If you haven't heard about one before, they are essentially the good, bad, and ugly, everything all in one document for a franchise company. It contains financial information in item 19. It contains information about the units that they have open and that they've closed, if they have. It contains information about fees and royalties and territories where they're franchising. It really is every single thing about them wrapped up into one. Now, franchises have different points throughout the process at which you can gain access to look at their franchise disclosure document. Many of them will have you just kind of complete a few initial screens with them to determine your interest, and then that might be a document that you'll get to take a peek at. For sure, by the time you're actually interested in franchising with them, it's something that you'll look over probably with a franchise lawyer. It's something that you'll be highly invested in looking at, because it really will tell you a great look at the financial and other pictures of the franchise brand. It's something that we take a deep dive into with the VetFran interview series, which is on vetfran.org. I sit down with Barb Morin Goodrich, the co-founder of the Morin family of brands and automotive franchise group. And we look at the item 19 to determine what pieces are important and what you should look at first. So Tom, in terms of this, when did you get to take a look at the franchise disclosure document, and did you speak with any other kind of current or former franchisees?
Yeah, I could say the direct answer to the first question is I had to fill out a screen first, essentially a profile, gave them some basic information, not quite a PFF, personal financial statement, but I did have to give them some information before they were going to release the document. One of the things that I think is important in this step, though, is if you're anticipating this going into researching a franchise, if you're anticipating, hey, I'm going to retire in a year, start that conversation early. If you're going to do the research, start it now, even though you may not be doing it for a year or two. That helps in building relationships with that potential franchisor that are very helpful. I did that 2 years before I ever retired, before I ever sold my practice, as I first began to think about it and research it, so that I was better prepared. It also makes the conversations about some of the more deeper issues a little bit easier from the get-go. But to answer your question, I filled out that initial profile once they identified that I was capable of executing on the plan that I had. And it wasn't everything, but it was objective information that they required. Then I signed an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, and they gave me their full disclosure documents. And I read through them probably. It's a long read. You're talking about in some case, 40, 50, 60 pages. And I read through them several times. And what I would recommend is that as you do it, go through it the first time, just blow through it. The second and third time, begin to highlight things that are important to you. And in particular, step back and look at trends. And that was the thing that I found most importantly in both organizations, both on the real estate, we're agents with eXp Realty, and on the Grease Monkey side. And I looked at the trends, and that's what I began to ask about. In the case of Grease Monkey, there was a significant period of time where all of a sudden, they're kind of doing what you'd expect from auto lube, and all of a sudden, boom, things changed, started adding on. And it wasn't just through um, acquisitions, it was organic growth. And that's important because those are franchisees who are growing their own locations. And what I found was that they had made some significant changes in leadership that reinvigorated the organization, and things were just taking off. And so, did that answer the whole question that you'd asked?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It is great to hear, that through your research you were able to kind of learn more about the innovation of the business, because on paper these things don't always stand out, but in discussions with other folks from the company and franchisees, you get a much better picture of those kinds of almost the character and things like that of the business that you may not see when you're just browsing the web and viewing documents. You actually find out kind of the spirit behind everything and the trending direction, because it can be difficult to determine how are things in the past, what is the trajectory, without actually talking to someone who has experienced that actual movement. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. The other thing that I did was we took the time to go to Denver. I talked to franchisees here in Texas, one that had been up and running for a couple of years, one that was in the building stage, and one that was brand new. And then I did the same thing. We went to Denver and visited them, and they spent an entire day with just my son and I. And we looked at 3 different locations. We met people from their corporate office. They invested a lot of time and energy into us, and so that just struck me. Whereas other franchises that I had called, it was very difficult to communicate with them.
Yeah, and I mean, like you're mentioning, it's a two-way relationship between the franchisee and the franchisor. While you want to open a business with them, they also want to find the highest quality franchisees that they can and bring them into the system, because you're going to be more profitable, more successful. Um, Everybody has an interest in doing well, and when that is the bottom line, then it really means a lot in terms of finding the highest quality candidates. So let's just move on here. Kind of a little bit more about selecting a franchise. We've been over a few of these, but it's important to understand kind of within the market the demand. Is it something that people still need? Is it a relevant industry? Things like that. What does the competition look like? How many places, both franchised and non-franchised, are already in that area doing that service? And do you think that you could capture a significant percentage of the market share to make yourself profitable? Your ability to operate the business. This is, I talked earlier about you don't need to necessarily have a huge background in doing, your industry that you're looking to franchise in already, but you should have, a confident ability to operate and to be successful within that business, which falls upon your ability to learn it. Name recognition is important. It's, you may be the first franchise of that brand in an area. So is it a national brand that you think will gain traction if it doesn't already have a name there? Or if there are already locations in that area and people know it, is it something that's viewed favorably? Is it great to come in with that? Will you gain customers just simply off of that brand name? As well as the training, we talk about, how supportive is the franchisor. That's a big thing to look into. you want a franchisor who wants to support you and help you grow. And then obviously a growth trajectory, kind of this mindset of innovating and things like that, keeping the business fresh, very important. So some attributes that franchisors will look for in a franchise candidate. This is how you can make yourself most attractive to a business when you're considering franchising with them. First of all, they want to see that you have kind of done your homework and you understand the franchise concept that they are, working with. Like Tom was saying, it's a big investment into a lot of time. You want to learn as much as you can about the business, because it really is kind of an interview process. When you show up, they're going to want to know, do you know our business? How much have you learned? Are you comfortable with the business? A lot of them actually, I've heard from franchisors that almost offer kind of a little quiz before you kind of get into the system. They're kind of like, well, answer for us these couple of questions to show that you've really learned about our business model. It's a great way to ensure that they know what you're getting involved in. Obviously, they want to see that you have the means to obtain financial capital. And it's important to note here that I say not the financial capital, but rather the means to obtain it. You may not have full liquid capital that's ready to be invested into the business, but they want to see that between your assets and your total net worth, that you may have the ability, the credit to go to a lending institution and receive the rest of what you need to get started. Or that you have financial business partners who are ready to invest enough to get you to where you need to be. Whatever you're doing, whether it's loans or your own net worth or other people's money from investments and things like that, they just want to be able to be sure that you can be financially comfortable within the business. And that's as much for you as it is for them. They don't want you to be financially upside down just because there may be a setback or something like that. You've got to be comfortable in your business. And it's not to keep you from franchising with them, but rather they want to just make sure that nobody ends up with a bad deal. Franchising is something where everybody wants to be successful. And so if it's too far out of your price range, perhaps there are other franchises, all the way down to home-based franchises with low franchise fees and startup costs. There are ways to get involved at every investment level. So that's part of the means to obtain there. Obviously, in terms of personal attributes, they want to ensure that you're someone who can be taught and that you're eager to learn the business model, but also that you are someone who can train others. You have an educational personality, and that you're able to kind of support a staff and train people about your business. Obviously, a history of success in your business dealings, that you are invested in your company and that you want to do well. All these are kind of personal things that they want to ensure that you are someone who's got a growth mindset, business motivated, things like that. And obviously that you're willing to follow their system, kind of being able to follow the guidelines and things that are set out within the franchise agreement and the franchise terms. It's critical toward creating that business relationship as a franchisee. Tom, anything that you would like to add or clarify on these?
No, I would say, Grease Monkey did that. I had a questionnaire that I had to fill out, talked about what my expectations were of them and what theirs are of their franchisees. No, I think it just speaks to what you said. It's a two-way street. We always say a rising tide lifts all ships, and they don't want to, invest a lot of time and energy in someone that's not going to be successful. And but again, do your homework, set up a team from the beginning. You pointed out something that I had forgotten about earlier. When I'm talking about attorney, CPA, banker, and I think that just helps the process move along and helps them see that you're serious. And so if you already have a vehicle, that's great. If not, then working with the bank to establish the things that are necessary so that as you're sitting there talking to the franchisor, that you show that you've got people around you that can fill in the gap for you, or they can say, hey, look, I've evaluated Tom's financial information and he doesn't have, he isn't liquid. He's not going to be paying cash for this, But we have a banking structure we think will help be successful, to help get everything set up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the financial piece is something we get asked about a lot at VetFran. You know, a lot of people who are separating from the military, you know, whether they're you know, younger and looking for their next step, or you know, simply are looking for a franchise that may be outside of their financial means. You know, finance is something we talk about a lot, and then whether it's SBA loans or private lending, or again, the concept of having other investors. It's a question we get a lot. So it's something that I want to just touch on there. And obviously, when I provide my information at the end, if there's any questions, or even throughout the session, if you've got any questions about something like that, please just let us know. Again, you can add questions using the questions feature here on the webinar. So a couple of keys to success here, and these are things that I've heard, you know, anecdotally from franchisees, as well as from franchisors who we've had on these panels before. You know, first of all, something like we just touched on, making sure you have enough money. You don't want to get stuck if something comes up, just like you'd want to have a rainy day fund in case your car breaks down. You know, in case something unforeseen happens, which obviously everyone's trying to mitigate. But if for some reason there is something like that, you don't want to be stretched to your absolute max in order to get to the franchise that you're looking for. So having a little bit of cushion there is important. Following the system, critically important, as we've talked about. This is something I like to include, and that I've heard from folks. Don't neglect your family and friends. Make it a family kind of business, right? If you've got folks who are getting involved with the business here, make sure that everybody knows about what's going on. Make sure that your spouse or partner knows that you're getting involved in this, where the finances are going. Keep everybody in the loop, because it's going to be better for everyone if it's something where everybody's up to date. Recruiting the best and treating them with respect. Obviously, this speaks to your employees. You know, the best way to keep customers coming back is to provide great service, which, you know, revolves around having great employees, great managers, things like that, to help keep your business running smoothly. You know, personally, for a franchisee, make sure that you're willing to learn and teach your employees. You know, that's how you invest in people in terms of, you know, human resources. Keeping them happy and educated on the business model, providing great service in a franchise really depends upon your employees also knowing how the business works and how it's found success. Giving customers great service, obviously that's how you keep people coming back. And this is something where I'll actually call to Dustin for a second. Getting involved and staying involved with the community. Franchises are community businesses. They're small businesses located in your community, owned by someone from your community. So in terms of franchises, you know, the city of Cibolo, Dustin, you want franchises to come because they are community oriented. You know, speak to a little bit about why the city wants you know, these community small businesses to come in. Why are franchises compelling for your city?
That's actually a great question. So we are what's considered right now a bedroom community to the greater San Antonio area. We're about 10 minutes drive from the city limits. So our mindset in terms of business obviously is to keep that small town Texas feel, and franchisors are providing that to us. So whether it be with some of the fast food options we have, we're getting some more dine-in options that are coming as more of our community develops. But we really want to get the community businesses involved, because to us, keeping that small town, small business atmosphere is something that our council and then of course our citizens are desiring. So I think, you know, this is mainly the reason why we reached out to VetFran, is to help encourage that community and that mindset to continue developing within our own community. So I think it, you know, overall the city's desire kind of aligns with VetFran's goals. And then it's nice to know that Tom was actually someone who used VetFran to then come into Cibolo, so it kind of comes full circle with our desires, and then obviously Tom's end result with getting a business in Cibolo.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's great to hear that Cibolo is, you know, interested in investing in you know, finding great franchisees to bring businesses to the city and kind of grow the grow the profile and add more resources. Franchises are a great way to bring kind of new ideas, new products and things to a city as it continues to grow. And a lot of people kind of use franchise investment and things like that as a great benchmark for the city's growth and performance and things like that. So that's definitely great to hear. So, briefly here, I just want to talk about the IFA Foundation, which is what VetFran is a part of. The IFA Foundation exists to be kind of a uniting hub for education and community outreach within the franchise community. We have numerous programs like the Diversity Institute, the program of certified franchise executives, as well as the VetFran program. We work together, the IFA and the IFA Foundation to really help promote franchising and educate people. So as you look into VetFran, this is another great resource that you can kind of use for your franchise search. A little bit of background about VetFran, because this is a veterans focused panel as well, and we'll kind of touch on those at the end because the information is great for everybody. But VetFran was founded nearly 30 years ago, and we're an organization that exists to help veterans find their next opportunity. And so VetFran aggregates opportunities from franchisors who all offer at least 10%, sometimes 50, 100%, or even additional resources off of those franchise fees. And so we help unite veterans to franchises that are looking to bring them in with financial incentives and other work, veterans programs within the franchisor. VetFran wants to help you find those companies that want to invest in you. And so, we have educational resources. We've got the new VetFran interview series that I mentioned earlier. You can learn more about financing options. VetFran.org is a great way to kind of learn more about how veterans can get involved in franchising and why the industry wants veterans to franchise. And that's where this slide kind of comes in. Veterans make up a very small percentage of the population in today's world, but veteran-owned franchises make up 14% of nationwide franchises. So, veterans are very much, outrepresented in franchising. It's a very veteran-friendly industry, and we call upon veterans in franchising because, as we talk about proven team leaders, people who are able to execute standardized operating procedures, comfortable with managing groups of people. In all ways, veterans are fantastic franchisees. It really is just a hand-in-hand relationship between the skills that veterans have and what we look for in the industry in franchisees. And it's important because franchisors recognize this. They see that kind of ability within folks who have served to be excellent franchisees. And so for that reason, that's why we see these incentives. It's both to give back, but also to invest in veterans who will make fantastic franchisees. And so veteran franchisees then go on to hire veterans to work in their stores. I'm sure, Tom, you probably intend to hire some veterans for yours as well. They make great employees as well. So it's a fantastic circle. Where veterans hire veterans, both from the franchisor down to the franchisee, then into the store. It really is a great circle. Finally here, again, just a little bit more information on the site. You can visit us again, vetfran.org, and learn more about it at the VetFran directory. Touch on here just IFA's Diversity Institute as well. If it's something that you're interested in looking into, we have a diversity and franchising program within the IFA Foundation with some national partners there. Just some statistics as far as the IFA has found that diversity in franchising has been growing steadily over the last several years as well. There's a 50% increase in minority ownership of franchises in that 5-year period between 2007 and 2012. It's a very diverse group between veterans and minorities within franchising. So it's a great place to get involved with. So, as we run out of time here, and I want to open it up just in case there are any questions here at the end. Here's the summary. You're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. It is the quote that I repeat most often, but it is definitely something where you can look back and say, all right, there is a system of support behind me, but also it's me, it's my business. I'm the one who's, I'm in it to make money. I'm in it to help my community. I'm in it to, find a sense of purpose in running this business. There's so many reasons why people get involved in franchising and opening their own business, but you can know that behind you is the system of support from the franchisor. There's so many different opportunities in terms of industry. It's not just, fast food. It is anything that you can think of and would want to do. As Tom and I talked about, there's a lot of importance in researching your options and asking questions of franchisees and franchisors, and just learning as much as you can as you get involved. Tom mentioned 2 years ago, before he even started the process of actually going through the franchising, he was learning about the business model. He'd expressed interest to them, was receiving information. As we've learned, franchising in this country is jobs and economic growth, 18 million jobs. It's a huge industry, and there's no better time to get involved. And obviously, it's a realistic and very attractive option for veterans. We've talked about how the industry sees veterans as a great way to help further exactly the kinds of characteristics that they're looking for in their franchisees. And finally, Tom, is there anything else that you kind of wanted to get in here at the end?
Now, first, thank you. I appreciate both Dustin and the city of Cibolo and the way how inviting they've been to us individually and then just as an organization. Super supportive. And then I think that this conversation should be required communication for active duty service members in their last 12 months of service, just to show them the options that might be available and begin the conversation before they're sitting there. They no longer have a uniform to put on, and now they're wondering what they're going to wear next. So nothing super in depth. If anybody has any questions about whether it's real estate or Grease Monkey, I don't know a lot about it, a lot of other things, but over the last couple of years, I've learned quite a bit about those two. And I chose those really because after 20 years of building my own business, my family made a lot of sacrifices for me and for my vision. And so I chose real estate and auto services because that's where our family is working. My wife and our daughter and son-in-law on the real estate side, and our son on the auto services side. And so I'm having a great time just helping them build their businesses and helping them see a success. If you have any questions, you can either reach out to me directly or through Dustin and Matt. And I'm just giving you guys permission to share my information with whomever might have questions. I'm more than happy because there's a lot of people that invested in me and gave me answers to questions in the process of making my own decision. And I'd be happy to do the same for vets. And to answer your question, Matt, yeah, we are going to be, we've already discussed the process that we're going to follow to try and hire vets and be a very vet-friendly organization, participate in our community, which is a lot of veterans and active duty service members. And then honestly, there's a lot of benefits to hiring vets. There's WOTC tax credits and all kinds of things that you get as an employer, but I would not know those things had it not been for the fact that I was working with other professionals that were saying, hey, look, it's great that you have a heart for vets, but did you know this too? So with that, I just wish you all the best and hope that you reach out. Don't be shy. I mean it with all my heart that I'm more than willing to have that conversation.
Thank you so much, Tom, for joining us. It was great to have your perspectives. And as you saw on the screen back there, my contact information at the IFA, if you need to reach out at all or you want to get in touch with Tom or I, by all means, please do. And Dustin, thank you so much for helping us to organize this. Is there anything that you wanted to say in closing?
No, just again, thank you to VetFran and of course yourself, Matt, for setting this up with me, and then Tom for presenting as well. It was a plethora of very valuable information. I'm already getting emails from people kind of asking me questions, and I'll be sure to answer them if I can or forward them and include everyone. But the one thing I did want to ask Tom was going forward, since you did say we can share your contact information, someone reached out and said, would you be not like a full mentor, but would you be willing to kind of help them in the Cibolo area if they're looking at just
Yeah,
kind of
absolutely.
advice? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to put together kind of a team
Hmm,
of other people that have similar questions, maybe we could do
of
some
course,
group stuff.
of
So
course,
that way I'm able to share a sufficient amount of time with them.
of course.
But if they all have similar questions, maybe we could have like a Cibolo, a not development team, but you know what I'm saying. If there's several
Of
people with
course,
similar questions, we could I could do a Zoom meeting and we could have several sessions like that. Anyways, we can talk offline, but
of
yes.
course,
Um,
of course.
and I'll I'll put my I'm going to put my email address in the chat if that's okay. Is that okay, Dustin?
That should be fine. Is that okay, Matt?
Absolutely fine. And obviously, if you're viewing this as a recording, anybody feel free to just reach out to again, the information that you saw on the screen there. By all means, feel free. But again, if you're viewing this as a recording, you can feel free to reach out to anybody who you saw here on the conversation. So I think that's our time then. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Dustin. This has been a great discussion, and I'm sure it will be viewed kind of in perpetuity as a resource here. So thank you, everybody, and we look forward to partnering with the city again on